Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being with us today in this webinar. My name is Raymond Sebastian and I am an English facilitator in LBA FIB UI, and I will be the moderator for this session. The topic for today is English for academic purposes, preparing for a successful study overseas. We have today with us three speakers. The first one is Ms. Santi Budilestari, who is a PhD student in linguistics in Lancaster University. We'll also listen to two other speakers who will be sharing their experience studying overseas from the academic point of view, of course. We have today also Dr. Rian Nugraha, a Master in Public Health graduate of Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Ms. Gracia Isaura Raulina, a Master of Science in Marketing graduate of Lancaster University Management School. Okay, we'll be running a Q&A session about the topic today at the end of the webinar, but in the middle of the presentation, you can start composing your questions, and you can use the Q&A feature in the Zoom. It's on the bottom center of your Zoom screen, okay? But we will be answering the questions later at the end, okay? Okay, so now without further ado, let's welcome the three speakers, Ms. Santi Budilestari, Dr. Rian Nugraha, and Ms. Gracia Isaura Raulina. Okay, please.
Right, thank you, Raymond, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I hope you're staying safe and healthy. I think I should start sharing my screen, okay? Right. Okay, bear with me. All right, so today, Rian, Gir, and I will be sharing our experience related to English for academic purposes to help you prepare for your successful study overseas. So I'll be sharing based on my experience as an EAP teacher, as well as an international student here in the UK. And then Rian and Gil will be also sharing their experience as international students from Indonesia. Right, so here is the plan for today. So I'll start with a short presentation on the range of EAP skills. I won't be able to really cover all the skills involved in EAP, but I hope I'll be able to sort of introduce you to some of the skills. And these skills or competencies are actually based on a study done by BALEAP, or the British Association of Lecturers in English for Academic Purposes. So what they did in their study was basically they interviewed lecturers and professors from different disciplines or courses from different universities here in the UK to find out what kind of academic skills that international students coming to the UK should have, especially at postgraduate level. So although the study was done in the UK, for the UK context, I'm very much certain that the range of skills are also relevant to you know, studies in the US or in Australia or in other English-speaking countries. And then we'll have a Q&A with two of my friends here. So you can also ask them questions later. Right, let's start with what is English for academic purposes? Is it different from the English language that we use in our daily communication when we communicate with people whose first language is different from us? If it is different, then what is the difference? So I'd like to introduce you to these two different concepts. The first one here, the basic interpersonal communication skills. So these skills are essentially communication skills in the language, in this case in English, that we use for our daily communication, again with people whose first language is different from our first language. Of course, when you go abroad to study, you need to have these basic interpersonal communication skills, because of course you need friends in your destination country, but more importantly, you also need to have what is called the cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP, which is essentially similar to English for academic purposes. And in the following slides, I'll be showing and discussing some of the skills, some of the EAP skills based on the study done by BAL EAP that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so I'll start with some of the listening skills. Again, these are not all the skills, but these are just some of them. The list is actually quite long, so if you're interested, you can go directly to the website and download the document. Right, let me start. So within listening, it's important for us as, students, especially in postgraduate course or program, to be able to cope with concurrent note-taking and listening. Yes, you have to do these two things at the same time. It might be quite challenging if you're not used to doing these two things simultaneously. Although you might say, well, we can watch or listen to the recordings, because I think nowadays most lectures are actually recorded and you can watch the recordings again at a later time. But then that means you will need to have more time. So if you can take effective notes while attending the lecture for the first time, then you can save a lot of time, and that's a very useful skill. It is not easy, but you can practice, and I mean, it's not in our nature really to multitask, so it takes time to really practice and develop the skill. Okay, another skill here is being able to understand sufficient content to allow engagement with topic. So most of the time, before attending a lecture, we have to read a number of articles or book chapters, perhaps, to sort of get some background knowledge on the topic of the lecture. So during the lecture, we already have some prior knowledge based on the reading. And while listening, we are expected to be able to assimilate information presented by the lecturer or the professor with information that you already acquired earlier. And the next two are very related, being able to cope with different lecturing styles and also being able to understand unfamiliar or non-native accents. Like here in the UK, we've got a lot of professors and lecturers from different parts of the world, and I believe it's the same in the US and also in Australia, in Singapore. We've got like lecturers from all over the world, really. Like in my department, we've got a lot of professors from European countries, and in the management school where Gear went to, there are also professors from Indonesia. So many of these professors are non-native English speakers like us, and we might not be familiar with their accents. So it's important to be able to sort of adapt to listening to different non-native accents. Moving on, speaking. Okay, right. Okay, for speaking, it's quite important to have the ability to engage fully in discussions, and also being able to present our case, for example, or our research. Although I think in most programs or courses, discussions and presentations are usually not assessed, but I think in some courses, they can be assessed. But still, even though they're not assessed, it's important to be able to take active participation. And if you happen to have research component in your course or in your program where you will be allocated supervisors, it's also very important to be able to engage in some creation dialogue with your supervisors. it's not just friendly kind of conversation, but it's really substantial conversation with your supervisors. You might be asked to justify, for example, your research methodology, because you perhaps selected a particular methodology and you have to be able to explain and justify that selection. And in some programs, you also have what we call here in the UK FIVA, or basically like oral exams. You also need to be able to respond to questions from the examiners. And then reading, okay, I think the picture here is not an exaggeration, it's real. And the amount of reading is quite massive. Not only books, but also journal articles, research papers mainly. So it's important to be able to read quickly for course demands. It's not just being able to read, but really to read quickly because of the amount you have to deal with. So that you can have time for other things. You can have time for fun as well. It's very important to practice reading before you start your program. And then it's important to understand relevance and status of different text types. Again, it's something disciplinary specific. I'm assuming that you're going to study, different courses or programs, and different disciplines require different types of materials, reading materials. For example, in my field, linguistics, what I read is mostly, I think, books and journal articles. But if you do finance, for example, you also need to read financial reports of multinational companies or companies listed on the stock market. You also need to read articles from, let's say, Financial Times. Again, it's disciplinary specific. And in preparation for writing, when you have to produce a paper, for example, it's very important to be able to recognize converging and or contradicting opinions in reading. So for example, you have to write a written assignment, and then you have read, let's say, 20 different papers. Then it's important to be able to identify or to group different viewpoints. Then you will be able to, for example, this author and that author, they tend to agree, like they share the same viewpoint, while a different author perhaps opposes that particular viewpoint. Or perhaps something like, this new model is a development of a previous model, or this new framework is actually a response to a previous framework, that kind of stuff. So it's very, very important in preparation for writing. Now, writing, which I personally think as the most important skills, because I think most of the time our academic performance is evaluated on the basis of our writing. You can later ask Rian or Gir perhaps, but I think in my field, for example, the assessment is I think it's mainly based on writing assignments. We don't really have exams. Okay, let's see. So it's important to be able to synthesize information into a cohesive, cogent, and convincing argument with strong evidence that we can get from the articles that we read, for example, and also to respond evaluatively and analytically to the question or to the issue, and also assimilate theory and match theory to practice. I think it's a very common essay type, really, where you have to implement or apply a particular theory or a model or a framework to analyze a certain case or perhaps a certain phenomenon. That kind of question is very, very common. And then the last one is about actually producing the text. Again, it's something disciplinary specific. I think in some programs you've got lab reports if you do engineering, for example, or physics. Well, lab reports are probably less common in some other disciplines. Like in my discipline, we don't really have lab reports. I think we have mainly essays, proposal, and literature reviews. And again, each one of them has different characteristics, and you need to know that, and you need to be able to construct your text appropriately. So here I'd like to share some of the resources that I have found useful as an EAP teacher, as well as a student myself. So these are books that are good. I need to be clear that I don't get paid by the publishers. So I'm not, like promoting these projects because they pay me, for example. I mean, I really found them very, very useful. And you might find them useful as well for your self-study. And I'd also like to share with you 2 freely available resources. The first one is this one, Writing for a Purpose. It's available for free on British Council Learn English website. This is very high quality academic writing material. I can say it's evidence-based academic writing material, because this was developed on the basis of corpus, like academic corpus in the British university context. So again, like very, very high quality. So please check this website, and hopefully you will find the material useful. Another resource that I would like to share, especially if you want to go to the US to study, this is another corpus. It's, if you can see here, I'm not sure if you can see this, but don't worry, I've got the link here, so you can go to the website and explore yourself. It's called the Michigan Corpus of Upper Level Student Papers. So I've used this mainly in my classes. So you can even download the papers. They've got like different types of written assignments. You can download them, and you can select papers or written assignments based on the discipline. For example, this one, biology. You can also see this pie chart. You can see the variety of written assignments here, like proposal, 7%, report, 46%, response paper, 3%, etc., etc. This is for biology. Let's take a look at another one. This one is psychology. So for psychology, they've got more types here. You've got creative writing as well. They've got argumentative essay, for example. So it's very, very useful resource, which is also freely available. Everybody can access this. You can download sample papers if you like. And I hope you will find these resources useful for your self-study. So I think that's all my brief presentation. And I think we are ready for the most anticipated part, where I'll ask questions to my 2 dear friends. Okay, hello, Rian, Gir. Can you, I think I'll stop sharing. Let's see. Right, okay, good. Right, are you guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Good. Thank you. So Gir is my dear friend. So we met when Gir studied here in the UK, and Rian was my student, Raymond's student as well, a very successful one. All right. Okay. So can we start with a more general question? We know, I think Raymond already mentioned what program or course you studied. Okay, for your information, I think in the US you call it program. In the UK we call it course. Course is like major, and we call it course. So it can be quite confusing, really.
Confusing.
So Rian and Gir, can you tell us what program or what course you took? Maybe
Yeah.
Rian, you can start.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Miss. Yeah. So I took a Master of Public Health program, MPH program in Johns Hopkins University. Um, the program I took, as I said, Master of Public Health, but concentrating in a very, I would say, technical matter called health economics. So it's intersection between health and economics and all things in between. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rian. So you studied health economics, particularly
Yeah.
within public
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
Okay,
And health policy as well, I would say. So the name of the concentration is health economics and policy.
right. So it's of high relevance to the current situation.
Very, very highly relevant.
Right, thank you. And Gil.
Yes, so hi everyone. I am a graduate from Lancaster University, as Basanti mentioned. We met there last year in December, and I took a Master of Science in Marketing program course in Lancaster University.
Right, an MSc in marketing, right? So yes,
MSc in
thank
marketing.
you, Gil. Can you tell us or describe sort of the structure of your program or your course? I know, Rian, you took a 1-year master's program in the US, which is quite uncommon, yeah? Because I think in the US, most master's programs are 2 years.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can tell us, like, why was it 1 year? And for Gil, I think it's quite common in the UK. Most master's programs are 1 year program. Okay, Rian.
Yeah. I think because my program is geared towards more professional, so it's suited best for professionals. So particularly those who had previously like 3-4 years of work experience. So, and the purpose of the Master of Public Health itself is to give a professional mindset as well as academics to those who are who previously had some sort of work experience as well. Parallel to my program, there are also programs like Master of Health Science. Those are and Master of Science in Public Health. Those are the programs that require 2-year academic programs. So it's a little bit different, although in implementation it's pretty much the same.
Right, okay, thank you. So that's quite unique. It's especially for professionals with work experience prior to taking the program. Right, thank you. Gil?
Yep, so for my case, as Basanti has mentioned, that in the UK, it is more common to have master program as a 1-year program. And it is what it was with my program as well, MSc Marketing. And it was more of a taught program as well. So it's not more about practicality, or we didn't have to have work experience before. So yeah, it was 1 year. It was really packed, but it was good.
Okay, it was very packed. I think for marketing, in the management school, they've got 2, right? They've got MSc in marketing and MSc in advanced marketing for those people who have work experience.
Yes, true. So what I took was the MSc marketing one, so it's more taught. But for the AMM, the advanced one, you had to have work experience before.
Right, okay. So since both of you took a 1-year program, which as Gil mentioned, it was very packed and intense, I'm sure. Can you tell us like the academic demand in brief, like in general? Gil, if you'd like to start, please.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of academic demands, I'd say that it is expected for a postgrad program to have more academic demands compared to undergrad. That's first. And I feel compared to undergrad studies, we are expected to base everything based on more scientific approach. That's why we were given a lot of reading materials to begin with for every class, for every project. And then also we have a lot of tasks, not only individual, but also group projects. That's why it was really packed, and we need to prepare and read a lot of stuff before coming up with our reports and our results for module A.
Right. Okay. So a lot of reading, a lot of tasks. Some are individual and some are like group tasks. Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Rian?
Yeah, I think since even though some programs in the US requires 1 year program, which is directed towards more for professionals, but I think in my case they're just packing a 2 year program into 1 year, which is might be good or might be bad depending on your ability to cope with the heavy loads of demands. Because I think, and I'm speaking this in all 1 year program in US, I guess, because we are we are expected to, for example, to give not to give capstone as well. So capstone research, so some kind of a mini research, and it needs to be done within 1 year. Uh, and what's interesting is that in my case, rather than having a semester based program, the university decides to move it into some sort of like 3 bulan program, like 3 months program. So
Yeah.
3 times 4 makes it 12 months program. So I think that's pretty unique. But in the end, basically it's jamming the 6 months semester requirement into 3 months. But
Wow.
but I don't know if that applies to other universities as well. But that's in my case. So
Well,
it's really heavy,
right. Wow.
and
It's very,
I'm not intending to discourage you all, but you gotta know and you gotta prepare.
yes.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that
the key
that's
takeaway.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really the purpose of today's session as well. So
Mm.
I think it's more like a master's degree course in the UK where we don't have semesters here. We have what we call terms.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one term is 10 weeks long. So we have 3 terms and a summer term where you work on your dissertation. We call it a master's. We'll talk about that in a moment. Yes, so talking about academic demand. So let's start with the range of assignments that you had to do in your program. I think I mentioned master's dissertation, and then Rian also mentioned capstone. But before talking about that sort of like bigger project, can you tell us like the other types of assignments, like whether or not you had exams or maybe papers, and what kind of papers or perhaps reports, that kind of thing. Rian, would you like to start?
Yeah. So we have position papers, which I think I need to thank both Mr. Raymond and Miss Santi here. Um, because in position papers it's kind of similar but kind of different as well from our other types of essays. I think in position papers we need to not only know about the substance of what are being talked about, but also to know our position and reflecting on our position to some degrees of what's the substance about. So, for example, when I'm talking about issue X, not only that we need to touch about issue X, but to convey our positioning towards issue X, and as well as the impacts of, for example, what if issue X is implemented in this setting, that setting, something like that. So so it's a bit reflective in a way, I think, but again with more details.
Right. Okay. So of course, if you can tell us, do they usually, I mean, the lecturers, do they usually set a word limit, like the word count? Because I think in the UK context, most of the time they mention like, okay, maximum, I don't know, like 5,000 words, for example, for an essay. What about in your context, Rian?
Yeah, yeah. There are word limits, and I think from approaching those word limits, sometimes you might go way more than what's expected from the essay. Um, and it's really hard if there are so many questions to be asked and it's not based on the paper itself, but the objective of the paper is to answer not only one question but many. So it's really on your ability not to understand the context, to get in depth about what's being talked about, but also to summarize key points about, because I think I'm speaking this both in UK and the US context as well. Professors do not need you to, hitting around the bush. So they want straight to the point paragraphs. They want answers basically, because they're not only getting your paper but also other thousands of students. So I think, yeah, yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. I think, in my experience teaching academic writing or EAP in general, a lot of students are, worried about not being able to write, let's say, 3,000 words or 5,000 words. Like they panic, like, oh my God, that's how many pages? That's a lot. How can I write that much? But in reality, once they start reading and once they start composing, I think the bigger challenge is actually to make it, within the word limit, right? I think for some professors, they might penalize if you go over the word limit. So yes, exactly. That's a very, very important academic skill to possess, really. Okay, Gil.
Yeah, so in my case, if we're talking about assignments, I believe there are 3 types, at least in my department. So the first one is exam, obviously, and then the second one is group project, and the third one is individual. If we're talking about the exam, in my case, it was more of essay writing exams. So imagine we have to come to the exam, sit in, and then write 2 to 3 essays at the same time, discussing different topics. So that's what all of the readings that we have done come in handy, because we need to discuss the topics. Because we are any kind of have to rise them, like those topics on our exams first time. And then the second type is group project. So I believe I can say for not only in my department, but also in management school, that group project is a really big thing. I think all of the modules involve some kind of group project at some kind of level. So either they were assessed or not. So they were really a big thing. Every module has its own group project, and it's usually us working on a problem and then using all of, again, materials, scientific resources, news, etc., to come up with a solution, a report that we have to present in front of the class and also to our lecturers. And then the last one is individual, but it's not that much, but it's usually in the essay form as well. So yeah, again, more reading and more writing involved.
Right. Okay. A lot of reading and writing. So Gil mentioned earlier that you can work on 3 different assignments, during the same period of time, and each assignment, of course, requires different reading materials, like different sets of reading materials. So that's quite demanding. So really, you can't really postpone the reading till the very end, because the reading itself takes a lot of time, and you can't start writing unless you've got enough, ideas from the reading. So Gil, you mentioned about exam, because I've never taken an exam. Can you tell us more, like what kind of questions, the exams, in the exams that you had?
Yeah, so again, exams are usually based on each module. So each module usually had several topics already, and usually the questions will be surrounding the topics that we have actually learned, we have actually discussed. But in this sense, we have to kind of not only discuss the topic, but also tell more about what the papers that we have read to come up with. It's usually about, again, solution. If there's a problem in this kind of sense, and then what is the solution to this? And then we have to base it on the papers, the methodology, or probably the findings that we found in previous papers to answer that, to give that solution.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So that's an exam, but it's actually you have to write essays,
Yes,
and still you have to cite sources.
Yes, yes,
so
true.
How did you do that? I mean, I suppose you didn't have a lot of time to go back to your reading, and perhaps you were not even allowed to bring all those journal articles. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, so yeah, again, we were not allowed to bring any resources, but so for the essays in our exams, we only have to cite the name and the year. So we try really hard to at least memorize those two things. And usually for one topic, there are already a certain papers that are like the Holy Grail. So we kind of just memorize those bits, those Holy Grail references, and then if we do remember the other stuff, then we could put it inside our essays as well. But yeah, it's a lot of memorizing skills involved, actually.
Right, yeah, okay. So you have to be able to identify the Holy Grail articles, right?
Yes,
okay, right. Rian, we saw from the corpus that I showed earlier that in the US, I think there's one very, very common type of paper called response paper. Did you have that as well in your program? Because I think it's not very common to have that kind of paper in the UK, or at least the name is not response paper. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. I think response, I think it's pretty much similar with position paper, but response paper mainly is to convey your messages about the topics that are being talked about. In position paper, you need to position yourself being A or being B. So, and there's no in between. And in deciding on whether you want to be sitting in A or B position, you need to convey your rationales, and I would say pretty much dig deep into the discussions on why you should choose A over B or otherwise. But in response paper, really all you need to do is to convey your messages, especially to answer the questions that are being talked about. And of course, in responding to such, you need to and not to answer that really just to for the sake of answering, of course.
Okay, right. Okay, and I think that's very common across disciplines. Yes.
Yeah, across disciplines.
Right.
I think in some settings there are some types of assignments that are different, but in essence the same. For example, because I'm coming from policy perspective, we have policy memos, we have other assignments such as I don't know, maybe in journalism you have the journalism notes, something, press release, for example, something like that.
Right, press release. Yes. Okay. Can you tell us about policy memo?
Yeah. What you need to do is to convey, for example, the essence of a policy in a way that is not confusing, accepted by all ranges of audiences, as well as actionable. So it's really more a guide to do what's supposed to do, policy-wise.
Right. Okay. Right.
Which
okay.
is more narrow.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Let's now talk about the end of program or end of course project, like dissertation in the UK and Capstone Project in the US. I think in the US context, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more common for master students to do a capstone project rather than to write a thesis. Again, Rian, if you like, you can start.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Right, about Capstone Project. I think in the US, it's very common to have, for graduate school students to work on a capstone project rather than to write a thesis.
Yeah.
Can you
Is
repeat again? We can't hear you.
project. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, okay, yeah.
Capstone project is kind of a mini thesis in a way. We spend the last 3 months to concept or questions the topics to be addressed. We use it's less on preparation and more in analytics.
Okay.
And not and thesis, for example, you spend 6 months because you spend supervisors, which similar to capstone, but intense way. So basically, the aim of the capstone itself is to answer a question of using means or measures that are not, resource intensive, as maybe not more as thesis. So, for example, for thesis, if you have to create a survey, you need to interview people. Then in capstone, you can do less and focus on the existing sources of data, for example, that supports your cause.
Right. Okay. So it's as you put it, it's less resource intensive. So perhaps you're encouraged to use secondary data rather than to collect data yourself because you've got limited time as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
correct.
Gil?
Okay. So in my case, firstly, we call it dissertation in the UK. And for us, it was also a 3-month-long dissertation period in which, for my case, we made it in a group. It was a group thing. It was a group project, but we had to deal with a real client. So it was a company-based project based on a real problem, and we have to give a real solution. And we had to deal with primary data actually, and also resulting in a report that is not only presented to our client, but also to our supervisor in the management school. So I think it was probably because it was a group project. So it was kind of, the task is divided between, for my case, it was the 3 of us. So it was less hard, but because we had to deal with primary data and then coming up with the report and everything, and that's what makes it hard, I think.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So you mentioned you worked in a group of 3. Did you have to write the report together, or did you individually have to produce a report?
Yeah, so we had to come up with one report, and all 3 of us have to write it at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So collaboration and teamwork was paramount.
Yes.
Right. And you mentioned that you had to work with a real client. So you were a marketing student and you had to work with a real client. How did you find the client?
Okay, so in management school, actually, the management school itself finds the clients for us. So it's not only for my department, but I think for all programs across management school, they have some kind of company-based project. So they kind of contacted a lot of companies and see if they want to to have partnership with the management school, probably because in Lancaster as well, Lancaster University is a big university in Lancaster. So a lot of companies which are based in Lancaster actually contacted the university first, management school first, because they know that they can be in partnership with the management school so that the students can work on their problems and then solve their problems. So yeah, the university managed those things, and then after they got the clients, they kind of managed each of the group to be in contact with each of their clients, the assigned clients.
Right, thank you. Okay, so the school actually managed the sort of partnerships. Okay, and that was really nice to be able to work with real clients. So you had real, first-hand experience, really. Okay, right.
Yeah, it was really helpful to. Sorry, yeah, it was really helpful to work with real clients.
Right. Okay, perhaps my final question, because we've got quite a lot of questions from the audience. The idea of college triangle, it's common for people to assume that we can't have all the three, like social life, academic performance, and sleep or health. People think that it's not very possible to have all the three. You have to choose two. If you want to be successful academically and be healthy, then you have to sacrifice your social life. Or if you want to have social life and health, then you have to sacrifice your academic performance. What is your take on that? And how did you manage your study, and sort of, perhaps some advice for our listeners? Gir, if you like, you can start.
Okay, so in my opinion, speaking about those three aspects, I don't really see it as a fixed thing, if you know what I mean. I see it as a rotational thing. So it really depends. I believe that you cannot have three at the same time, but it's a rotational thing. Say you are in your exam week, then you probably should be sacrificing your social life. But it only lasts a week anyway. So the weeks after, you can meet your friends every day if you want. So it really depends on how you prioritize each of these aspects in every time. And then it also comes to your level, your standard of self-sufficiency. I mean, if different people have different needs of sleep, different needs to socialize, different needs to study. Probably in my case, I don't mind seeing my friend probably only once a week, twice a week, and then probably just, socializing with my classmates in between to fill those gaps. And it's okay. So it all goes back again to your own level, your own standard, and how to find that middle ground of each aspect that you're satisfied with.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Lian?
Yeah, I think it boils down to how would you allocate time, which is very technical. Some people have variations over others. But I think the most effective one is to really focus on time spent on your behalf. I think there are really, there are many ways you can be distracted in your studies, and this is not only saying you should restrain from going out and stuff, but again, really focus on your time. Use scheduling when you need to, um, because for sure you don't want to miss out the opportunities to go out and then to experience the what I'd say the fullest version of studying abroad. Um, in America, in the US, in the UK, there are great spots for hiking, trekking, and then you just don't want to miss those. But again, especially in a course where it's really it has a heavy load, you want to allocate your time wisely. So and use any means of scheduling necessary on your end to really commit times, because and loosen up a little. I think most of us, if you're given chance to study abroad, we see other people, we see other classmates, succeeding. Maybe more than us, and this is not speaking personally, but in a more general sense, you need to loosen up a little and try to experience ways more than what's expected academically. Because to put things in perspective, you are there for what number of years, right? But what you want is to take away lessons and create lasting impacts of what certain years you will spend on that university. So you would want to think about, building a networking and then spend some of your time to do outside activities as well. Yeah, maybe one or two activities to post in your Instagram. And yeah, and things should be in balance. And the most important thing is that you need to loosen up a bit. So
Right,
yeah.
thank you. So again, it's about time management and setting priority. Maybe if it's exam week, then you should sacrifice your social life temporarily and you can catch up with your friends later after the exam week. And also about loosening up, I think it's about taking care of your mental health. So it's not just your physical health, you really need to take care of your mental health. Right, thank you so much. And I think it's now time to address some of the questions here. How should we do this, Raymond?
Okay, yeah, all right. So, well, first of all, thank you very much for three of you. You've given us very insightful, inspiring information, right, about how to actually prepare to, it's very useful for whoever planning to study overseas. Yeah, thank you very much. So now, as Santes mentioned earlier, we will go ahead and take some time for questions. And we have a lot of questions here actually, but when I look at the questions, there are some questions that actually focus on one thing, which is how to improve, how to get all these academic skills, and how to actually they ask questions like how to write a good essays, how to write good academic paper, how to listen to lectures effectively, how to engage in discussion. So all the academic skills, how can we get this? How can we get this? And how can we practice so that we can actually apply all the skills when we study abroad? Okay, that's pretty much the main point of some of the questions here. Can you answer that question first?
Yeah, okay. Any one of you would like to start? I probably can add later.
Okay, maybe from Rian. Rian, how did you prepare? Okay. How can you actually become a successful student? How did you get all those academic skills beforehand?
You can really be honest, Rian.
Yeah, to say successful, it's a really subjective matter. I think, as I mentioned as I mentioned earlier, success is relative. Yeah, but I think I guess it really boils down to the point where you need to um, maybe prepare earlier, prepare better, and spend your time better. And to put things in perspective, I'll give you an example from my class. For example, when you want to attend a class, for example, there are so many informations that you're gonna get, right? But to make things more efficient for you, I think some spending some time for reading, especially for materials that are that are suggested by your professor, that would help you and ease your pain later on. Because at the actual class, you can spend your time in seeking answers that are outside the reading. And you can spend your time more in asking about the professor's experience and how to reflect that in the context of whatever it is that you're learning about in that class. And so that's what I meant by spend wisely, spend early. No, spend time wisely, prepare early. Of course, in that class, you don't want to miss your chances out in a group discussion, for example, because you need some background information for you to be able to speak or whatever, right? And having that early exposure to the material boosts up your confidence. And yeah, this is speaking for personal experience as well. So really, I think that's the key. Of course, to be able to do that, I think you need some time to practice right now in Indonesia on how to read better, how to listen better, and how to compare messages better. Yeah, I think that's your kind of your homework while you're here. But where you're there, when you have a chance, do spend your time effectively.
All right, thank you very much, Rian. So prepare early, okay? So while you're still here in Indonesia, prepare everything, and when you're there, use your time wisely. Okay, all right, very good. A very good tip from Rian. Yeah. Okay, Santi, maybe or Gil would like to add something.
Yeah, I mean, I can add. I think, well, you've got to practice the skills and acquire the relevant skills before you depart. But when you're already in the university where you're going to study later, most universities that I know in the UK as well as in the US, they also have what we call, wait a minute, like academic support provisions. It has a different name. For example, in the Lancaster University Management School, they've got the academic writing zone or the one-stop English. So generally what I'm trying to say is every university has some sort of duty of care. They already take you in. So if you happen to struggle academically, they will provide support, and please really make use of that support. It doesn't signify what you call like weakness. It doesn't show that you are weak. No, not really. Don't feel bad about using that kind of support. I've seen some home students, some students here from the UK. Of course, English is their native language, and sometimes they still need support with academic writing, because again, especially for undergraduate students, they just finished high school. It's a new kind of level of demand, and they might not be certain about certain conventions in academic writing. So feel free to use those kinds of resources and find out whether your university or your department has that kind of support. Yes, Gia?
Yeah, so I agree, especially with the part about having support in the university. So firstly, if you want to have a successful academic performance, say, of course, you have to spend your time well and also strategize well. In my case, I mentioned earlier that my assignments are divided into 3 types, but then each of them has their own weight to the total score. So knowing how they all weigh into the total score and then managing your resources and your time well to probably prioritize the ones that are that have higher weight will probably be better for you if you want to manage the time well and also get a good results. Yeah, so that's probably my take on this.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, all 3 of you. Okay, Santi, for the next questions here, we have quite a lot here. We have 25
right, yeah,
open questions. You can actually just choose the one that you think is relevant for your topic today. And then,
yeah,
again,
I'm kind of
confused
because there are so many.
Yeah, most of them, like I've told you earlier, most of them ask like how to write good academic papers, how to listen effectively, and so on and so on. And
Right.
All 3 of you have mentioned that yes, it takes training, it takes practice, and of course it's not easy. It's probably a long process.
Right.
But Rian mentioned prepare early, because it's not easy. You need to prepare earlier. When you are there, you can have better surroundings. Like Santi mentioned, you have the academic support and everything else. But yeah, of course, preparing ahead before you actually depart would be beneficial, right? Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I think I'd like to add. I think really make use of the resources, especially you can use and try to download some of the written assignments in there, so you can see some good samples.
Okay.
If you haven't seen a sample, then it's kind of hard to imagine what is the standard, so to speak. So try to download some of the samples and study, okay, so this is the level of expectation. And you can also see some question types or some essay questions. Some departments in some universities, they also publish previous exam papers. So please, study all the resources available. and check the level of expectation and standard that will be expected in that particular program that you were interested in. I think that's very important. So you know, like the target, you know the goal,
Okay.
and then you can see the gap, like, okay, where you are now and where you need to be, and then you can take actions and plan how to sort of fill the gap, if you like.
Okay, all right. That reminds me, actually, there are some questions asking about resources. How can we get resources? Like Santi, you've mentioned earlier that we can download some of these examples of good essays, good academic papers, and so on and so on. Can you name some of the websites that you usually, or maybe Rian or Gir can mention some of the websites that you usually use to get more materials to enhance your academic, or maybe some books or something that can help students to prepare and enhance their academic skills before they go, or maybe while they are studying abroad?
Well, I think for that, I had one. I think because I'm a Santi student and Raymond student, so
Yeah.
my list is already, I don't know where, somewhere now maybe. So you can refer to both masters for that.
Okay. All right.
But I think one important thing from having those lists is to actually implement it, to actually practice it. Because once you know the list, you if you read only for the sake of knowing what's in the list, then it won't store up in your head. So again, but if you use if you have the word list, you learn the list and you try to apply that in your essay, in your writings, in whatever, it gets stored longer. I think biologically that's possible as well. So
Okay.
yeah, just one tip.
Okay. All right.
Raymond, just
Yes.
quickly, I think I saw a question which is quite important, and I think I need to clarify.
Sure.
I don't know, I tried to find the question, but it's gone, but I
it's
kind of remember the gist. So it was about a Toefl score. I think the question was about, is it true that there is a different standard for Chinese students, something like that, about Chinese students and Toefl score? Actually, not really a different standard, but in the UK, and I believe again in the US as well, for example, if your IELTS or IBT score is still below the requirement set by the department or the university, sometimes you can still get a student visa, but then you have to, depart earlier. So you have to be in the country maybe 6 months before the program commences, and then you have to take the additional EAP course. But it depends on your IELTS and IBT score. If your IELTS score is still kind of well below the requirement, there might be another requirement, like an in-house, we call it an in-house test that you need to take. So you take an EAP program for, depends, maybe 10 weeks or even 6 months. And at the end of the program, you need to take a test or tests. And it depends on the results. If your results meet the requirements set by the department, then you can sort of like transfer to a new student visa, because the initial visa is usually only for the EAP program. Okay, so it's like a short-term visa. So it's not about lowering the standard or lowering the score requirement for a certain student population, but it's more like providing them an avenue so that they can develop their language, academic language skills. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation, Ms. Santi. Okay, so I think we are running out of time. I'm really sorry that we cannot answer all the questions in the Q&A panel. Maybe in the future we can have like a similar webinar with similar topics with more time to answer questions. Yeah, very exciting questions. Actually, a lot of those questions are very important. But again, because of the time constraint, we are really sorry we cannot address all of the questions. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, Yeah, okay. So I would like to say thank you very much again to our speakers, Miss Santi Budilestari, Dr. Yanugra, and Miss Gracia Isaura Raulina. Yeah, again, you've been giving us very, very nice information. What do you call it? Yeah, what is it? The importance of all these English for academic purpose skills to have again successful study overseas. Yeah, that's a very good keyword, successful. Okay, therefore, participants, if you're planning to study abroad, make sure to prepare all the academic skills needed so that you become a successful graduates like Miss Santi, Dr. Rian, and Miss Gracia. Yeah. Okay, participants, before we end this session, on this occasion, I would also like to invite you to a poll. Give me a minute. So the host will soon give a poll that you need to answer briefly. Let's see. Okay, stand by. Okay. Okay, yeah, okay. Soon the host will launch the poll. Okay, you can see it on your Zoom screen. Please take some time to look at. There's only one question there, very easy, and it's multiple choice.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I hope that you're all finished with the one question in the poll. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Before I end this session, on this occasion, I would also like to inform you that LBE-FEBUE provides EAP courses. Yeah, we have if you can see on my share screen, we have the 4-level English for academic purposes, level 1 to 4. Okay, it's a very good program covering all 4 skills needed, reading, listening, speaking, and writing. We also provide the specific academic writing program, which consists of 3 levels, from elementary to the upper intermediate level, 1 academic reading and academic presentation program. And there's also a tailored one-on-one tutorial program, actually, in which the participants, they have the liberty to choose which academic skills specifically that they want to enhance in the program. Yeah, and as Ms. Santi has mentioned earlier, Dr. Rian here actually used to be one of our students in an, what do you call it, an EAP and IBT Toefl preparation course, right before he went to the United States to continue his study. Yeah. Okay.
I was worse than this before I joined, and then suddenly I am, like this.
Yeah.
So thanks to both of them.
Yeah, so that's what Rian probably mentioned as one of the preparing earlier. If you can take a course, take an English for academic purposes course, please do take one so that it will be very helpful for you to at least, what do you call it, get to know all the skills that you need. Okay, and of course to enhance them slowly that you can apply them later in your study. Okay, so for more information, you can please contact the email there. We have info.lbefebue@gmail.com. Okay, all right. Yeah, so finally, thanks again. Yeah, thank you very much to Ms. Santi, Dr. Rian and Miss Gracia for the very useful knowledge. Yeah? And for all the participants, thanks again for joining us today. Thanks for being with us here today. And we will see you next time. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you. Goodbye,
bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.